Hey everybody, this is GGB, and today we're going to be talking about the one top 25 game we have. Didn't hit on my upset of the day yesterday, but on the bright side for you guys, we did actually get two upsets, and let's go over them really quickly. Didn't really affect much in the standings of either one. We almost had one of the biggest upsets of the year, in my opinion. 10.5-point underdogs, Oregon State, who hadn't won a basketball game their last 12 attempts, almost upset number 16 USC, guys. Took them to double overtime before falling by 3 points. So it was very close. I really kind of feel bad for the Beavers that they didn't pull it out. That might have actually somewhat salvaged their season. Obviously, they would have still just been disappointed after making it to the Sweet 16 last year. And actually, I think they made it to the Elite Eight. I'd be a little bit disappointed I didn't make it all the way. But, I didn't at least make the March Madness tournament, and I was the worst team in the Pac-12. This would have at least made you feel a little bit better, though. But Ohio State gets a big win over Illinois, upset Illinois on the road, and Illinois now sits one game up, only one game in the win column over Ohio State. Not only did that help Ohio State in their hopes of getting to the 3 seed, which would be nice, because instead of playing Rutgers, you'd be playing Iowa. I don't know if that's a big, drastic difference. But, goals to get as high a seed as possible, in my opinion. So that at least closes, it makes it a little bit closer if you're Ohio State. Plus, it gives you a little bit more wiggle room against Rutgers and Iowa, who are coming up behind you. But also, if you're looking at it, if you're a Wisconsin or Purdue fan, it gave you more wiggle room. And it's really down to you two, in my opinion. The race is going to, for the number 1 seed, now that Illinois lost, I think it's Purdue-Wisconsin. I think that Purdue-Wisconsin game that's coming up in about a week, I think it happens next week, that's going to be the game that will decide who has the regular season title in the Big Ten. And I think both these teams, they're really good, and they deserve a chance to play for it. I think that's going to be a phenomenal game. And then our other upset, we got in the Pac-12, and if you're looking at it, this was a huge, huge win for Oregon. Oregon was slumping a little bit. They lost 3 out of their last 4. Some pretty bad basketball teams, too. I don't think Arizona State's horrible. I think that's a really solid basketball team that's on their right trajectory. But Cal's just straight up bad, guys. It's not a good basketball team. Also, by the way, I don't know what Bill Walton is smoking, but in no world, unless Washington makes a run at the Pac-12 tournament, are they making the March Madness tournament. I don't know what the heck he's smoking. Now, it's possible Washington State and Stanford make it, although they both only sit 3 games over 500. And Stanford's on a 2-game losing streak. I don't think Stanford's that great, and Washington State's proven they're not that great. So I don't know about that one. I think if you're looking at it legitimately, I think you got 5 teams from the Pac-12 in the tournament. I think Arizona, USC, UCLA are obviously locks. I think Oregon's a tournament team, especially with the win over UCLA. They get a shot at USC tomorrow as well, so let's see how that works out. I think Colorado, despite losing to Arizona State, is a good enough team for the Pac-12 tournament. They're 10-8 in conference, 18-10 overall. I think that's a good enough record to make the tournament, as long as you win some of your last games and don't embarrass yourself in your conference tournament. I think 18-10 gets you there. But the win for Oregon, by the way, number 1, it helps USC. Although USC almost got upset by Oregon State, and that would have been a nice win for Oregon State. At least it would have made a chance you pass Utah and Cal. I mean, that's the goal, is to pass one of those 2 teams. Don't be in last if you're Oregon State. But you would have to win your next 3 games, and I think you lost your opportunity to pass either Utah or Cal. And dang, it kind of sucks because the Beavers really did have that game. Poor Beavers. Anyways, Oregon got a big win because not only did the UCLA lose, Oregon now sits only 1 game back, UCLA, from getting a tie in conference. I understand UCLA has the tiebreaker over them with it would be a 20-7 overall record. You have a 19-10. But you'd be at least getting close if you're Oregon, and that's the goal. Also, a loss would have been pretty detrimental, although Arizona State helped them out against Colorado last night. Still, you'd want to get the win. Anyways, there's one top 25 game today. I'm going to have to pick it and hope for an upset. That would put me at 2.5 points, which means I'd have to get an upset in a day without an upset to pass it. That's not an unlikely scenario. I think that can happen. If I hook it, though, sit at 1.5 points, I need to get 2.5 points, which means I'd have to get the biggest upset of the day and an upset. It's unlikely, at the very least. So this game's going to very much determine the likelihood of me hitting on any of these games. But 8 o'clock, we have number 25, Iowa, which is at 19-8. Traveling to Nebraska, which is at 7-20. Iowa favored by 11.5 points on FS1. Iowa's put themselves in an elite position. They've won 2 straight games to put them at 9-7. Now, this is the tough part about being at 9-7. It's really great to be at 9-7. Not gonna lie, in the Big Ten, that's really good. Now you're in 6th place, or at least you're tied for 6th place. Michigan State and Michigan both sit at 9-7 as well. But you have the better overall record, which means you're ahead of Michigan State and Michigan. Cool thing here for Iowa: if you get this win, which you should, it's against the Cornhuskers, then you pass Rutgers, or you're in a tie for Rutgers, technically speaking. In conference standings, you have a better overall record. You move to 5th place. Now, that could be temporary or could be permanent, depending on whether Rutgers wins against Wisconsin tomorrow. So that's going to be an interesting game to watch. If you're an Iowa fan, you're going to be a pretty big Wisconsin fan as well. But if you're an Iowa fan, you're a little bit disappointed Ohio State didn't lose because, I don't know, your chances of getting into the top 4 they're shrinking by the day that there's not an upset. I don't know how many games Ohio State has left. Probably 3. But you're going to have hope for an upset in, 2 of those. So, I don't know. I don't know if you can get into the top 4, but you can get to 5, which is an interesting place to be if you're a Iowa fan. Anyways, Iowa with a loss, however, you're put in a very different situation. You drop behind Michigan State and Michigan now, again, and you would fall into 8th place. Now, I don't know how permanent that would be. Michigan State plays Purdue tomorrow, which is a likely loss for them, and Michigan plays, I forgot who Michigan plays, but it's also a very tough basketball team. They play Illinois on Sunday. So, I mean, I don't know how likely it is that they win those basketball games, but it's possible, right? Because Michigan State, when they get on, they are one of the best teams in the Big Ten, and when they're off, they're not. But if they get on, they can beat Purdue. And Michigan, I mean, Illinois is a good basketball team, but they've shown that they can lose to some pretty sucky ones. So, I mean, it's interesting. It really is kind of fascinating if you're looking at it. For Iowa, you could be a loss doesn't put you in the worst position because I feel like Michigan State and Michigan both lose tomorrow and Sunday, but a win would be great for you because it would keep you even with Rutgers. Remember, win puts you in 5th, loss puts you in 8th. So don't lose. Win if you're an Iowa fan. Rutgers fans would love an Iowa loss, and so would Michigan State, and Michigan fans would love an Iowa loss. That's what you're rooting for if you're Spartan, a Wolverine, or Scarlet Knight. On the other hand, Nebraska's playing. Not a huge deal because a win or a loss, they're not moving up. Now, if you're Minnesota, a loss for Nebraska would ensure that they can't pass you. Nebraska has 4 games left. If they win those 4, theoretically speaking, they could get to 5 wins. And if you lose all your games, but if they lose this game, and you're Minnesota, you might not have it locked up because I think Maryland is going to play less basketball games. Actually, if you lose out and they win out, they could get to 4-15, and you could fall to 4-16. So theoretically speaking, even if they lose this basketball game, you don't have that second to last spot locked up at least, but you'd be getting close if you're a Maryland fan. That's what you'd be rooting for. Rooting for an Iowa win. Probably the only person rooting for an Iowa win. Indiana would also love an Iowa loss. It would get them closer. Penn State and Indiana would both like it because more Indiana than Penn State. Penn State sits at 6-10, unlikely to pass Indiana at the very least. Very unlikely to pass Iowa. But if you lose this game, you're Iowa. You're only 1 game up on Indiana, so that's something to root for if you're the Hoosiers. Anyways, that's the top 25 team. I'm gonna have to pick the upset. I don't feel good about picking Nebraska. Honestly, Nebraska's beaten 1 Big Ten team all year long, and that is second to last place Minnesota. So I mean, they haven't really shown an ability to beat good basketball teams, but I'm gonna have to pick them anyways. Everybody, this is GGB saying adios amigos and go Cornhuskers.